Welcome back to the week 2 episode of We Live for Saturdays. Joined here by Chris and McCoo. How you boys doing today?
Week 2.
Splendid. Good to be back.
Chris,
Great first week.
You got a festive background, a new background for you. All the pennants.
Oh yeah, they're all over the wall. Growing up, I had tons and tons, but got the top floor of the house all decked out with the different pennants. It's looking good.
I can confirm that the top of his bedroom growing up, from vertically, it was a pennant throughout the entire perimeter of the bedroom. So glad to see that habit hasn't changed.
And this is, I guess, that's grad school, and this is my spouse's alumnus. So,
well, speaking of swag, what do we got on today, though?
K-State, the little apple.
Let's go.
In Manhattan, Kansas.
My Big 12 champ.
Yes, there you go. What do you got, McCoo?
I'm celebrating the big win. I got the Boston background, first of all, over there. And then I got my BC Eagles 1-0 top 10 win for Billy O'Brien.
Let's go. You called that close game.
I not only called that, I called the money line, plus 600, baby.
Is the city buzzing for the Eagles?
As much as a city can buzz for a stadium 10 miles outside of town.
Well, speaking of stadiums, I got Welcome to Plaster Stadium, Missouri State, eBay's finest.
I was going to say, that's got to be an eBay find.
I was at Trader Joe's a couple months ago wearing the shirt, and he was like, Missouri State?
Who?
Whoa, have you
Joe?
been there? No, not Joe.
You need Trader Joe?
The Trader Joe. He tried to trade that shirt for you.
A cashier. He was like,
McCoo's done
Missouri
that.
State? Like, that's awesome. And I was like, I have never been anywhere close to the state of Missouri.
I was wearing my Alaska Anchorage shirt from a couple weeks ago on the show.
Hey.
Not you now.
I was like, hey, how much do you like Alaska? And I'm like, what are you talking about, old man? And he's like, your shirt. I'm like, oh, my bad. Yeah.
What if he just like gave you the finger and said, "Go Juno"?
Yeah, exactly.
Heated rivalry up there.
Yeah. Let's not get back into the whale and versus Seawolves talk.
We're done. Well, hell of a week 1, let's say. We're back in the swing of things in college football. Lot of crazy stat lines. I know McCoo has a lot of stat lines that really stuck out to us. A lot of fun games. Spent the weekend down at the beach before I got sick, just watching college football from Thursday to Sunday constantly, and cannot love it enough. And then a little cap there with the Florida State 0-2 there at the beginning of the week. But
they're in trouble.
They are in trouble. Chris, what stuck out to you for week 1 there?
I mean, I think both sides of the Boise State game, Ashton Genty, everyone knew he was like a boss. He got offered tons of money, stayed at Boise State. What's that stat line? 20 carries, 267 yards, and 6 tutties. However, unfortunately for Boise State, their defense, atrocious. So I think we're going to touch on that and their week 2 matchup a little later. But that was a huge takeaway for me. McCoo, yeah, I think your Boston accent, is there a fellow in Arizona that really had a good game?
That Troy McMillan told you last week, called it, and he immediately delivered 10 receptions, 300 yards, 4 touchdowns. You always know, like, especially with Gene T in Boise State and with McMillan in Arizona, they score like 2 and the announcers are like, oh, watch out, this guy is having a great game. And then they keep scoring over and over. When Ashton Genty got his 6, the guy's like, who cares? Obviously, he's going to score. It was like a 2-yard tote and just bashed through the wall. He's like, yep, obviously, there's 6. So it almost like it's like a bell curve. You get really excited for like 2, 3, 4, and then by the time you're getting 5, 6, 7, they don't even care anymore.
Right.
But T-Mac, as he's been affectionately called, a.k.a. a lot of people can't pronounce his name.
Well, that's just Tracy McGrady.
I was going to say, but he's
Especially
he wasn't
in
even alive the last time the real T-Mac was in the league, so I think he's taken over the new Big 12 after dark, as I said in last week's with Arizona being these days.
Yeah, I think what stuck out to me in week 1 was a lot of the top 10 teams kind of had a slow start. I feel like that kind of always happens. We kind of get our hopes up when an expected dominant win just sort of slows, but Ohio State started off super slow. I feel like it was like 10-3 at halftime. Michigan had a slow game. Even
Oregon.
I know Chris is super ecstatic with Oregon. So
they killed my five-leg parlay, and that box score, I'm going to be tilted actually. They outgained Idaho as expected by about 250 yards. I mean, what did Gabriel throw for? He almost threw for 400 yards, 41 for 49.
I was
41
say
for
he was
49.
Like 40 plus completions. He set a
In
record.
what game is that not 70 points? And I just was throwing it in there, and they win by 10, scoring 24. And so, yes. But I digress. Sorry.
yeah, I think I'll talk about it later when we talk about the highlight game of the weekend. But Texas was one of the few that looked strong all 48 minutes, let's say.
Arch Manning,
however many minutes, 60 minutes. Yeah, so they looked really strong. Granted, it's a weaker Colorado State team, but it's not even like they were playing an FCS team. So they look super strong down there in Austin.
I was gonna say, speaking of beating up on the lesser of the teams, two Heisman favorites, Jackson Dart at Ole Miss and Jalen Milroe at Bama. Obviously, household names probably at this point, but absolutely went off. I think Jackson Dart had like 5 touchdowns in one half and then got sat for the entire second, and they won by like 70, like Oregon should have done, Chris. And then Jalen Milroe, I think, went like 7 for 8 or 7 for 9 for over 200 yards, 3 touchdowns, and then ran for another couple. So their Heisman campaigns are off to a very good start.
Well, let's hope for a better week 2 than week 1 and only up from here. I mean, that doesn't even mean week 1 was bad, but as the season goes on, college football gets great. So,
yeah.
Super excited. Before we get into, I think we have 3 sort of in-depth games for week 2. Some of the highlight ones. We have some mailbag mail, don't we, Chris?
Yes. And and I almost forgot, there were a few heartbreakers. Abilene Christian, I'm sorry for them. And Central Arkansas. Both of those should have been wins. Absolutely awful.
Well, Central Arkansas actually won the game, and the refs just gave it to...
The Sun Belt apologized.
When the conference comes out and says, yeah, the refs messed up, and they're probably going to be suspended.
Yeah.
Brutal. But no, Abilene Christian, was that the 51 or 52 to 51 in overtime?
Yes.
I respect the going for 2, though, because I feel like when you're such an underdog and you get to that point, you're just like immediately like, all right, let's just go for the kill shot, and it just had no chance.
Well, on the inverse of things, I think I told you this, Miku, earlier this week, but Stephen F. Austin, I don't know if you guys saw that, but they were up 77-0 at halftime against like an NAIA team, and the entire second half, 1 5-minute running clock, and they just ended the game.
Wow.
So,
yeah, that team how much did they have to pay that team to show up?
I looked it up. It's, well, not the amount, but it's like it was Northwest State. Not even like Northwestern State. It was just Northwest State. So
sounds like one of those made-up teams that just travels the country to get shellacked.
Yeah.
It's like, which state? Don't ask questions. We're Northwest.
FCS Northwest. Yeah.
Exactly. FCS Northwest. That's exactly who they are.
All right. But yes, to Sam's point, we do have 2 mailbag questions. So first of all, thank you. Keep them coming. We love to see the questions and the engagement. First up, this question's from Rachel. Shout out my wife. So
my wife.
Everybody, thanks so much for the engagement. Thanks, honey.
Engagement and marriage. All right. Anyway. But longtime listener of the pod. So the Oregon Duck, the mascot, to be specific. I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of his social media antics, game day, that kind of thing. Is he more of a menace or a marketing genius?
Question.
Yeah, you have thoughts on that, Mike or Sam?
I think he's the Gritty of college football.
That's very good.
I know. It came to me when I was, as soon as you mentioned menace or marketing genius, because that's exactly what Gritty is. And basically which is all, and obviously Gritty is an offshoot of the Philly Fanatic, so I think the Oregon Duck is just kind of going to the school of the Philadelphia mascots. So, it's hilarious, but I think it's pretty spot on.
Yeah, I think the transition to the Big Ten, I feel like Big Ten is not very tolerant of just like antics as often with like mascots, and he's just taking it head on. He's
I
going to
love
all the
that
campuses.
tour. Yeah, exactly.
He's just putting it out there. So I love Puddles. He's more of a menace than a marketing genius. Maybe the people behind him are the geniuses, but he's more of the psycho. But
he's the face. He's the face of it all. Yes.
Reading into, I got a big rabbit hole on the Oregon Duck. There's a lot that you could learn about it.
Puddles is amazing.
Fun fact, the Oregon football teams, or just teams around Oregon, were originally called Webfoots because in like the late 1800s, they were a group of fishermen that were heroes during the Revolutionary War. And then those descendants of those fishermen eventually came to Oregon and just kept the name. And it didn't come until like the 40s where it's like, hey, we're Webfoots, but that doesn't make sense. Let's be ducks. So...
hear us roar. Yeah, that's interesting.
Unnecessary knowledge for you.
Well, and that translates actually very well to me, because in my Oregon Duck, yeah, well, and it really wasn't, which is great. Yeah. Did you know that in 1947, the Webfoots, they've developed a mascot. It looked a lot like Donald Duck. And in 1947, the Oregon athletic director reached a deal with Disney. Disney was coming after him and sort of said, hey, you're using our likeness, the original NIL. And they're just like, hey, we reached a deal with Disney, and now they were able to use the duck, and Puddles is who he is today. I think he's the perfect level of troll, but he's also cute and fun. So...
and an all-time mascot to play with on NCAA 14.
I love those.
Or no, those old ones. Not even 14, the older ones, but
you keep it in the
squad of ducks.
Pac-12 and do the Oregon Duck versus the Stanford tree.
I was going to say the tree, too.
Time. Yep, you don't even see the ball.
Well, speaking of the Cardinal, I played against them in a dynasty yesterday, and in that game, that mascot is a menace. There is a lot of thrusting and a lot of inappropriate things going on with that tree. So
it's the most realistic game ever made.
Yeah, love it. What else we got, Chris?
All right, so that was a good one. I love also getting into the non-X's and O's. So mascots, traditions, I love talking about that stuff. So the next one, a little more X's and O's. This question's from Alex. Thanks for the question, Alex. Unfortunately, I'm sure you guys saw the gruesome injury from Max Johnson at UNC. What is the impact there? A broken femur, absolutely gruesome, low-high hit. You saw him buckle. Just hate to see that. Son of Brad Johnson, I believe, the former NFL quarterback. So what's the outlook for UNC?
Yeah, that was a tough one to watch. I was down at the beach with some UNC alums, some NC State alums, so we were definitely watching the game, and seeing a kid that's gone from LSU, A&M, and then now UNC have that happen to him in the first half of his first game with his mom crying in the stands, that was not fun to watch. That's definitely a shame. But from more of a tactical standpoint, UNC, fun fact, I was just blown away by their strategy in that game. They averaged 4.5 air yards per throw in that game against Minnesota, and even lower amount when the backup came in. What's his name? Connor Harrell. So I don't know if that was their plan going in, or if they're like, hey, Johnson's out, let's just run the ball with our stud running back. Is that the plan all year? Or I know they have some weak opponents coming up later in the next couple weeks. Do they use those cupcakes, lack of a better term, to sort of iron out the throwing game? So that's something I'll be looking out for in the next couple weeks. Granted, UNC I don't think is pushing, especially with the quarterback situation, as hard as other teams for a conference title, but it can definitely go for a 9-win season at least. So something I'll look out for, just to pay attention to how far they're stretching the field.
Omari and Hampton, though. All-time name.
That's all you got to say.
He's their offense.
Yep. That's all you got to say. He had 146 total yards in that game, 116 of those were after contact.
Guy's a bowling ball.
That is unbelievable. He's, I mean, that's another guy similar to Genty. He could have left for a lot more money. Obviously, I mean, there had to be a letdown this year coming from Drake May. I believe this was a long battle throughout the summer, so you hate to see that injury. I don't see too much of an impact. Sam, you touched on it. As far as timing goes, it happens at a great time. That they came away with the win on the road in Minnesota. Now they have two get right spots with Charlotte and North Carolina Central, and then they rattle off a rather easy ACC schedule, which, I mean, if you guys saw this weekend, other than Miami, it was a very rough weekend for the ACC. So they have Cal, UVA, Pitt in that stretch. So I think there are some really winnable games. I do see 8 or 9 wins on the table for them this year.
Well, and that those 4.5 yards per attempt or air yards per attempt that I mentioned, 5th lowest in the country all last week. So they're definitely throwing short. But something that we'll be interested in is Penn State is number 4 in air yards per throw from that first week, 14 yards. So I know that's something we didn't touch on in the week 1 recap, but we had a lot more explosive offense than what we're used to. So I'm looking forward to it.
Let's keep it up. It's one of those things. I hope we keep it up because we had, Penn State had a very good showing last year with some big plays against West Virginia. I hope that translates to more consistent
I saw a stat somewhere that said all of last year, because we had like the 1 or 2 big ones first game against West Virginia last season. I think the entire year we had a total of like 7 or 8 like 40-yard plays, and in just this first game against West Virginia we had 4. So that's a phenomenal start to the year. So
Absolutely,
Andy Koltelnicki is just going to keep the guns blazing and keep Drew Aller on the up and up.
There you go.
We'll love it. Yeah, keep the questions coming. Keep the engagement coming.
Because we will learn about your team if we've never heard about.
We do deep dives on whatever.
Exactly.
100%.
Everybody knows Omari and Hampton.
Football.
Not many people. Not many people know Connor Harrell yet. So put his name on the map.
Just throw questions about stocks, and we will be down.
Yes. Bear markets and passing offense. Is there a correlation? We'll find out.
All right. Well,
investors, possibly you.
All right. Well, previewing week 2, like I mentioned, we have a couple games that we wanted to sort of dig in a little bit. Starting off with the noon highlight, big noon kickoff on Fox. Texas at Michigan. Like we mentioned, Texas definitely had a dominant win against Colorado State, -7 in this game against a Michigan team that kind of didn't exceed expectations against Fresno State. So, Maku, what are you looking for in this game?
Great question. Thank you for going to me first. No, I was very prepared. I think a lot of people are big on Texas because of the big win, of course, obviously. But again, that was Colorado State. Michigan, I feel like people are a little down on because, defending champs, but lost a ton, lost their coach, lost their star QB and everything. And apparently now they're starting a former walk-on, Davis Warren, whose name and stature doesn't really strike fear into you. But shout out Davis. He is a leukemia survivor, so I'm not going to drag him too much. But good for him for taking the Michigan starting job.
Yeah,
and he beat out
back there.
I was going to say, he beat out Alex Orji, who was like the super prospect who was supposed to be, handed the job, kind of like, when you expect any sort of 4 or 5 star to go to a big-time program. But good for him for battling it out. But anyway, to that point, Michigan kind of slogged along, as I feel like they do every year. I feel like we talked about them exactly this time a year ago, being like, they didn't really dominate their first game. Maybe they're not going to be as good this year. And then they just continue to steamroll everybody in their way. So I think they were probably more taking it easy against Fresno or just not opening up the playbook. I still think their defense is pretty dominant, and I think they slow down Texas to pretty much, I don't want to say a grinding halt, because Quinn Ewers is still fantastic, but I think they're going to bring them down to their level rather than have to escalate their offense to Texas's. So I'm taking a lower scoring game. I'll take like a 20-14, 21-14, 21-17, that sort of ballpark. So give me the under, and I will take Michigan with the points because it's at the Big House, obviously.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I
Do you
I
disagree
like
with all
Texas.
that?
No, well, kind of.
You're wrong.
I
He's
have
a
already,
leukemia survivor, Chris.
and that I'm very happy about that. But I think I have already bet Texas. I got them at -5. They were
Oh,
of well, before last week, I think it was closer to around 3, I want to say.
talk about
So
flux.
it has gone up rather quickly after what we talked about. You're spot on though as far as Michigan. Um, you know, I think it was 21 and a half Fresno State. That was another one that I think we were on a little bit in our text chat. Fresno State's a solid team. Michigan didn't open up the playbook that much. I don't know how much they're going to be able to anyway this year as far as the pass game. They're going to be running it. Obviously, towards the end of the game, they started wearing down Fresno State. I don't think they're going to be able to do that to Texas. Much deeper, much bigger, much stronger, all of that. Plus, you have Quinn Ewers as opposed to the Fresno State offense. So it's a totally different ball game, in my opinion. It does help that it's in the big house. That's obvious, but I don't really have an inkling on the total here, but I like Texas in this game.
Yeah, I'm sort of on the same side. I'm rocking 5.5 points for Texas. But now that I'm thinking about it, I mean, it could easily be 20-17, something like that.
That's true.
I like the under as well. Something that's not really talked about as often as their offense is Texas's defense. Last year, their defense was very strong, and if not stronger now. So Michigan, I'd be shocked if they'd scored 20 points in this game, maybe even 17 points, something like that. So um, that's sort of what I'm leaning. Side note, I spent 15 minutes this morning watching a App State versus Michigan highlight reel of that entire game.
It was a great
And
game.
17 years ago.
yeah, I really only see like the block kick and maybe like one other play, but like I don't remember the flow of that game as well, and it was just amazing the ups and downs of rooting for one team or the other. So
Sam and we went to App State the week after. It was already planned. That was an absolute zoo.
yeah, and my 14-year-old self got a airplane bottle of whiskey poured on my brand new sweatshirt.
Hey, they were feeling it. The Mountaineers, they just kept that whole fourth quarter. Come get you some, and just
Hey,
start.
I was gonna say, wasn't Michigan's kick that would have won it though if it didn't get blocked?
Yeah, it was.
Right?
It was,
Yeah.
It was 34-32 with like 30 seconds left,
Yeah.
and Chad Henne bombed a 60-yard pass to Mario
Exactly.
Manningham
To get down
to
there,
get to like
exactly,
the
yep.
20, and that would have won by one. It was
know what?
wild.
The reason that kick got blocked was the collective sigh of relief by the entire stadium, being like, "All right, we're not going to totally blow this."
Yeah, for
And
real.
then, nope. See you later.
Yeah.
All timer.
All time. Well, next game here, definitely have some interest here locally as in Raleigh, NC State versus Tennessee. Tennessee 7.5 point favorites in Charlotte. This game is at the Panthers Stadium. Expecting a higher scoring game, about 60 points. Night game. Tale of two different first games for these two teams. Let's say Tennessee absolutely dominated Chattanooga. I have a couple stats on them later, and then
Poor
State
Mox.
didn't look too very impressive against Western Carolina, at least for the first 3 quarters. So, Chris, what do you like here?
Yeah, this was one that I've been looking at the last few weeks as well. I think Tennessee's the stronger team. It certainly showed last week. Obviously, totally. Well, it's both played FCS teams, but Casey Concepcion, he won them the game last week. Tennessee's obviously going to need an answer for him there. But Tennessee, they have Pierce on the edge, Nico Imaleva. Tried to get close there, but he's
Well
a
done.
stud. He's a stud. I think it is up to, what is it, 7.5 now?
Mm-hmm.
That's another similar to Texas. That number keeps rising based off the recency bias from last week. I think NC State's going to give a much better effort than what we saw against Western Carolina. They're going to come to play. They're going to be ready. but Tennessee's a solid team. I'm going to pick Tennessee.
I'm going to go out and disagree with you again.
All right.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding, Chris. No, I definitely pretty much everything you said. Nico's certainly a stud, and yes, he's has an awesome, very quick first name, very long, kind of like DJ Uyunglele, but he is come and gone as we saw this past weekend.
I'm pretty sure we're better than
I was gonna
DJU.
say, Nico's the next up with the hard to pronounce name, but he's really really awesome. So, yeah, I see them just. I like NC State a lot. I think they can go like 9-3, maybe even like 10-2. But this will definitely be in the loss column for them. I do like that they shifted it to Charlotte, like Sammy said. Moving to the big stadium, and it is. I don't know if it's exactly halfway between the two, but it's a lot more of a middle ground.
Mhm.
So, could be a very good fan attended game. And I know Tennessee always shows out for technically away games for them. So I just think they're much a stronger team. Their defense is still very stout as well. So even if NC State can put up a couple touchdowns, I see Tennessee running away. So probably take the over as well because 60 seems it's a very high number, of course, but it seems right on for this one with NC State if they can get a couple. So yeah, give me the over and give me Tennessee.
Yeah, I'm on board with what y'all are saying. When I'm looking at like what I think is more safer to predict, I think it's Tennessee's offense against NC State's defense. The inverse of things, McCall in that offense, they could either score 10 or they could score 35. He was not in sync with anyone on that team other than Concepcion. The only way they got yards last week was putting him in motion, jet runs, things like that.
Yak.
So the basic plays that we play on College Football 25, those are how they got him the ball. So I don't really want to touch that side of the ball. What side I do want to touch is Tennessee team total is 33.5. They had 725 total yards of offense last week. Granted, it was Chattanooga, but that is an insane number. And for an NC State defense that didn't really cause Western Carolina to punt a lot, they should be really easy to score on. Let's just say that for Tennessee. So I think they can easily score 35, especially against probably half the stadium being Tennessee fans. So excited for that. I think it'll be a fun game. That's probably the one I'm most excited for, just from fandom perspective, as you can see the hat as well. But looking forward to it. Should be fun.
Yeah, definitely.
Last one here, Colorado at Nebraska. This was the game. No, it was TCU last year. I thought this was going to be the follow-up game last year where Colorado beat TCU. Everyone was like, whoa, what's going on? And then they go and beat Nebraska.
Well, no, they beat TCU game one, and then they played Nebraska and beat them again, and everybody's like, oh, they are for real.
This just happened. Right. Yeah.
Yep.
So this was the second game last year. I would have no idea what to expect from Nebraska if that game wasn't on during the Penn State delay. I had to watch 3/4 of that game during the delay. So have a little bit more knowledge of Nebraska, but Colorado, man, they could have easily lost to North Dakota State. That was I knew it would be a good game, but tough game to watch depending on the side that you're on. So excited for this. Nebraska 7.5 point favorites at home. Maku, what do you like here against Dion?
I love that half point on top of the 7, I'll tell you that. I think I'm going to take it right off the bat, say Colorado plus 7.5. I think that Colorado brings back pretty much the same exact team. Well, obviously not same exact because of Dion just swapping players in and out. But he kept his star power. He's got Shadur still back there. He's got Travis Hunter playing both sides. He's got Jimmy Horn still running, slot routes and catching everything. So, he's a very good spot, and he also has the same kind of weaknesses with the O-line, and defense is a little bit slightly improved, but didn't really show it against North Dakota State, of course. But I think they're a good FCS team. They always have been, so kind of got their best shot there. On the other side, I like Nebraska in year 2 under Matt Rule. I like him as a coach a lot. I think he's got them going, way better than Scott Frost could ever dream of, or whoever their last, 5 coaches have been. So I think it'll be a battle. I think it'll come down. I think it'll be a really, really good game. Another one I'm excited they put in the evening slot, 7:30. So I'm going to be paying attention to that one. But I think they'll trade some blows. I think Dylan Raiola will kind of make himself more of a household name than he was to just, recruit people that care about 5 stars and everybody like that. But we'll see if it goes. I'm saying like a 31-28, 35-31 kind of game. So like the over, and I like the hook a lot of the give me the touchdown and a half either way. Or obviously for Colorado, but I think it'll be within that window either way.
Well, I was pretty convinced I was going to be on the Nebraska side. Like a lot of your points, I really like what Matt Rule's doing. I think they're significantly improved this year. You mentioned Raiola, the depth they have in the trenches, starting to get back to that Nebraska image. However, it's just, I don't think I can take them. If I were to lean, I would still lean Nebraska. I'm probably not going to bet this one or take this one, but I do like the total. I think Shador is going to work some magic. I think there's going to be some crazy plays. I could see a fumble recovery for a touchdown, a pick six, but he's also going to throw for 350. I think, and it doesn't really matter who they're going to play. And then we saw, North Dakota State, great FCS team, but Colorado's, still should be able to stop them a little better than they did, and they didn't. So I think there's going to be points here. I think there's going to be some freak plays, like I mentioned. So I am interested in the over, but I do think it's going to be really, really fun, close game.
Yeah. Last thing I'll say, I agree with the points you guys are saying. I'm gonna rock with Colorado first half money line. I think they come out of the gates hot. The stat lines that offense puts up is insane. Like that game against North Dakota State, it felt like they weren't doing the numbers that they were putting up. Like those numbers that Shadur had were insane. Like I knew he was playing very well, but not at what I saw.
Yeah.
So it's like Dylan Gabriel on Oregon,
basically.
Yeah.
I feel like they can come out and win this first half 24 to like 14, and then something like that, and then Nebraska could easily make some adjustments at halftime and either cover the live line, whatever it is. I think Colorado can win the first half. So that's what I'm gonna ride with. I'm excited for that. I think they'll be able to put up some points no matter what. So can't complain.
I like it.
Awesome. Well, those are the 3 games that we're super excited about. Later on in the pod, we do have our first guest. We'll talk about the Cy-Hawk rivalry a little bit more Big 12 conversation, but
big time celebrity. We're flying them in on a jet.
Hey,
we're getting to our game day status.
And chat us on Instagram, TikTok, whatever. If you want to be the next guest, please hop
you are
on in.
More than welcome. We're trying
join
not
the
to
train.
lose lives.
But before we talk about Big 12 and some of the other topics that we had with Andy here, what other games are you all excited for? Maybe 1 or 2 that you can call out.
All you, Chris.
All right. So I had a couple written down. I wanted to point out Kansas, Rock Chalk, even though I'm wearing the Kansas State shirt. At Illinois, first sellout for Illinois football since 2016. That'll be a fun one. I think that over is interesting. They're going to be excited. Start out hot, but Kansas has that offense. I'm also interested in Arkansas State. I backed them last week. They play Tulsa. I think Tulsa's defense, awful. Central Arkansas, they sort of crumbled against them, against Central Arkansas towards the end of last week. They still put up a lot of points. So, but Tulsa, Central Arkansas is a good FCS team. I'm going to back them again, -7.
There we go. I like Baylor playing at Utah. That just has the makings of I feel like for some reason that just seems on paper to me like a game that happens every year, even though I know that Utah has just switched back into the Big 12. So maybe I'm thinking of 10 years ago or however long it was back when they were doing seasonal matchups. But that should be a fun game. I think Utah is 2 touchdowns of a favorite. And I'm excited to see. I think Baylor's kind of slowly but surely getting back to that, fast-paced where they're putting up, 40, 50 points every once in a while. And Utah is still kind of Utah where they have a strong defense. And is Cam Rising back? Did I miss that last week? Is he playing? Is he healthy?
Yep,
he
played very well.
Perfect. So that's exciting. He's a very thrilling, classic college football player.
His stock is rising.
Exactly. There you go. So I'm excited for that game. That'll be fun to watch. Probably won't bet on it, but that's just like a good matchup on paper. And, the epitome of college football. You get your, afternoons on Saturday, sit down on the couch and be like, oh, I do have an interest in this game now.
Love it. Yeah, fun fact about the Tulsa defense, Chris. I think they played Northwestern State last weekend. Was that who they played, I think?
Yes.
I had Northwestern State team total over 9.5, which I thought was pretty high for an FCS team, and they scored like 24. And I was like, hey, rock on. But one game that I'm excited for is App State versus Clemson. I feel like App State loves to play these ACC schools in the first couple weeks. Plus 17. That seemed like a very high number. It might be a little bit of an overreaction from last week's loss to Georgia. I might look at what like the first half line is. I could see App State being amped against Clemson, wanting to pull that upset, and then maybe them pulling away in the second half. Might look at what just the first half lines are, but really curious of what Clemson looks like. Are they kind of down in the dumps, or are they just still hopeful for the rest of the year? So I was curious about that.
I love that idea on paper with that massive point spread, but I think if Dabo doesn't get his team coming out and beating the crap out of App State, then he's going to have a lot of questions to answer to. He already does, pretty much.
Like Norvell.
Exactly, but the memes about Dabo online are hilarious these days. But I'll let everybody check that out on their own. But it's just he's in such a tough spot because of how good he was, 3-4 years ago, and he just hasn't reclaimed that glory yet. So, and starting the season, obviously it's the best team in the entire country with Georgia. You don't expect to, dominate them or even really try to stay close, but you're a top 15 team. You're our former national champion. Your coach is still there. You're still recruiting at a high level. You got to score a touchdown. You got to
show a little life.
You got to show a little life, more than 3 points. So
there's a simple solution to get on the right track is to use the transfer portal. But
some people just refuse to do it. Yep.
Him in military academies.
Well, I think he's going to come out though and try to make a statement against poor App State.
Yeah,
I like App State as a team a lot, and I think they're going to give them their best shot. But I bet Clemson does end up covering that.
Yeah. Agreed.